Oh man, what's going on, everybody? If you don't know, now you do know. You're officially tuned in to a very special edition of the HFWB podcast series. This is your host, Clifton Pope, and like I always say, it always pays off who you know and who you're connected to, because it's all about just providing the information, knowledge, and resources just from all walks of life to, of course, tell different experiences, different stories to work and help benefit you, the audience, and you, the listeners, on every episode of the HFWB podcast series. And this guest in particular, who I'm about to bring on, is no different than the other. Well, he is a little bit different because he chooses, along with his lovely wife, to walk in the light of faith and, of course, walk in the light of God, which is something that we need more of in this world that we live in. And to kind of give a better understanding of what this gentleman does, he's literally a Christian TV broadcaster, a producer, a speaker, an author, a marriage coach. I mean, he has his own program called Winning with Love TV on the Zandra TV network that you can check out by streaming on all different platforms like Roku, Amazon, just to name a few. He's the founder of IAM Love Builders, where their goal is to create a loving environment that values marriage and relationships. We can all use that. And at the same time, he's also the executive director of a nonprofit called Seeds of Dignity Coalition, planting seeds of dignity throughout the whole nation. And honestly, we're going to get into all that. If you have no idea who I'm talking about, and also, before I forget, he is also the author of his new book that he just released called Mastering Adam, Becoming the Best Adam to Your Eve. And at the same time, he wrote the book with his lovely wife called Divorce Proofing Your Marriage. We're going to get into all of that. If you don't have no idea who I'm talking about by now, please welcome Mr. Casper Stockham to the HFWB podcast series. Casper, how you doing on this motivating Monday?
I'm doing great, Clifton, man. I appreciate you having me on the show today. So I'm excited to get into the conversation.
No. Thank you so much for just making time out of your productive schedule to make this happen, most importantly. And for those who are listening to the HFWB podcast series and who wants to know like a little bit of your background, where all things started with your journey to where you became the man that you are today and the man that you're slowly growing and improving and evolving to be every single day, how would you describe that to those listening to this episode?
Yeah, so that's a lot to unpack. I turn 65 next week.
Oh, wow. Okay. Happy early birthday. Happy early birthday. Yes.
Thank you. So I've been out here for a while. I started out on the East Coast. I grew up on the East Coast of the U.S. in Connecticut. And then I went into the Air Force at an early age. I was 17 when I went in, and went through the ranks and stuff. Got to about E5 and realized there was a lot of things going on that I didn't really, I wasn't really into, I guess you could say. And plus my rank, it kind of got stifled. So I was kind of stuck at E5. So I decided to get out, and then I couldn't really find a job. So I went into sales and marketing and training and things like that. I wound up doing that for a long time. And then kind of fast forward to now, 22 years ago is when I met my wife, and I call my life BC. So before Cheryl and then now.
I like that.
So before Cheryl, I had been through multiple relationships and failed marriages. I was not doing well in the relationship department. I was doing well in other areas. I was always healthy and things like that.
Right.
But just on the relationship side, I was failing miserably. And I can remember distinctly 22 years ago, I was outside of my apartment, sitting in my car, just had another failed relationship end. And I was crying out to God. I was like, God, I really want to be married. I really enjoy the institution, the whole thing about being married. But I didn't know how to pick them. My picker was broken, as I say. So I was sitting to God. I said, God, look, if she's out there, you're going to have to bring her to my attention, because I'm not going to try to force any relationships anymore. I'm done with that.
Mm-hmm.
If I need to be single for the rest of my life, I'll just be single, but I would prefer to be married. And about 2 weeks later, I get the vision of Cheryl in my mind. Now, I knew of Cheryl and she knew of me, but we were not even remotely looking at each other. I mean, it was like, I found out later she didn't even like me. You know, she's like not liking me at all because of our interactions. They were very toxic in the sense that I was still in a relationship at the time. So it was just very bad.
Right.
So when God flashed in front of my mind, I was like, well, you know, she is pretty, you know, but I don't know anything about her. But I said, okay, well, I'm going to ask her out on a date. So I asked her out on the date, and we went to the movies. And just that whole process of getting to the date was a whole story in itself, but I'm trying to shorten it for lack of time. So we went out on a date, we went to the movies. After the movies, we talked for 3 hours. And I realized that night that God had answered my prayer. And he had brought me my wife. And now she was not convinced that night. It took me 2 weeks to convince her that this could be something.
Mm-hmm.
And 45 days later, we were married. And 22 years later, we are doing all the stuff that you mentioned in the intro. So.
That's crazy. And as you were describing that, how you connected with your wife, Cheryl, I was just thinking about, you know, the relationship that I'm in with, of course, the love of my life, Emily. It's like, I remember when we first met, it's like, it was me this was me working at Home Depot as a cashier. I'll never forget this. I remember going to work in the garden department to work the cash register out there because the person who was supposed to be over there, they didn't show up for some particular reason. So this was last minute.
Right.
Fast forward, I mean, I see Emily walking in with her friend who one of her friends who actually works at Home Depot with me at the time and was trying to connect us. And at the time, you know, I really wasn't into it like that. You know, I've had my series of failed relationships and stuff like that. And I kind of went through the same thing you went through, Casper, like, God, please send me someone who could be the one for me. Went through that whole phase. And then, Lord, behold, 10 years later, we've been in a relationship ever since. So it's like, what you just described in a way is that how God really does work in mysterious ways, because look at what happened with, of course, my relationship. Look at what happened with the relationship with you and Cheryl. It's just like, it's like over time, there comes like this foundation of trust and foundation of shared values and beliefs that just brings every couple together in general in honor of not just love, but most importantly, faith. And I feel like that's the main thing that people forget in a relationship. Yes, the love is great, but let's not forget about the faith, because there's a reason why y'all came together at that particular moment in time, because I feel like God, and just every relationship in general, God brings the man and the woman who are meant to be for each other together at the right moment and right time. And sometimes we notice it right away, or sometimes we question ourselves to where it's like, is this the one for me, or something of that nature? Do you feel like that's what kind of like helped happen to you in a sense, Casper? And do you feel like that kind of sparked your overall journey to the next level once it did happen for you?
Well, this was the first time that I actually asked God to get involved in my relationships. So I had been
It always
forcing
happens like that.
Yeah. I had been forcing the issue before. I would jump into situations and then realize months later or years later that I erred big time.
Right.
So this is the first time that I actually physically, mentally, everything else, emotionally asked God, look, God, please bring her to me because I don't know how to pick these. I keep picking the wrong ones.
Yes.
Now on Cheryl's side, she was getting prepared, but she was not looking to get married. In fact, she had friends that had been married and were not happy. So she didn't want anything to do with it. Right. She wanted to just be single, but just profitable. She wanted to have a profitable business. So she was a realtor. So she wanted to, sell a bunch of homes and make a lot of money. So she wasn't looking, but she was getting prepared. And what I mean by that is she was in coaching with an older sister at the church who was mentoring a bunch of young women. And she was saying, if you get your mind right, he will show up. He will come into alignment. But she wasn't necessarily looking. And that's when God was able to bring us together. And quickly we realized, like I said, it took 2 weeks, not 2 years, it took 2 weeks for us to be on the same page.
Right.
And then moving forward. And everything we did, God was at the forefront of it.
Of course.
And I think that was the key.
That's a major key, because now fast forward, you're over here, you and Cheryl are basically working together to help create, like I mentioned, the loving environment that values marriage and relationships, even though it started off a little bit slow for yourselves. But once y'all got going, y'all were able to build something off of that chemistry, and most importantly, mixing in faith, which is the key ingredient within that chemistry that y'all building now. Y'all have a whole religious organization, IAM Love Builders, basically helping others do the exact same thing. I kind of want to hear like the backstory, Casper, on how IAM Love Builders comes together, because when I was looking into it and I was looking through like the details and watching a couple of videos, it literally, the title speaks for itself. It's like you're literally building love through the power of faith, and at the same time using that to help create things that help other people value their marriage and their relationships. Kind of explain that a little bit more in the details for those who are listening to the HFWB podcast who wants to know what IAM Love Builders is.
So I would love to say that it was this vision of ours to come together and teach couples and all the other stuff, but that was not the case. We had been married for 4 years, happily married, and things were going well. And we were at this one church, and we were on the committee to help put a marriage retreat together. And I had been doing marketing and sales in my past, and Cheryl also did marketing and sales. So both of us were comfortable at speaking to groups and doing presentations in front of audiences and stuff like that. So we're on this committee, and part of the task for the committee members was to present at the marriage retreat. So we said, okay, no problem. So we put a PowerPoint together of us combined, and then we had our section, if you will, of teaching at the marriage retreat.
Right.
Well, the pastor came up to us afterwards, and he said, I don't know if you guys ever thought about this or ever even paid attention to it, but you're really good together. Your energy and stuff, you're working off each other and stuff during the presentation. It really worked. And he said, I know another couple that you should talk to because they have a grant, or they're part of a grant.
Right.
That goes around and does workshops for couples and singles around Colorado.
Right.
So we got in touch with that couple. They connected us to the Center for Relationship Education. And then for the next 8 years, we started getting paid to do workshops around Colorado for couples and singles and everything else. Now, that was part-time. It wasn't full-time work. It was like on the weekends and stuff like that.
Right.
But it got us leaning into this idea of working with couples and singles, and we enjoyed it a lot. So then we had the thought of creating our own entity. And that's when we came up with the name IAM, which is the great IAM Love Builders.
I love it.
So that started about 16 years ago.
Is there a particular couple that you can recall, Casper, to where you and your wife Cheryl worked with them to the point where you were able to transform their marriage, their relationship so much to where it kind of impacted you both, to where you looked at Cheryl and she looked at you, to where it's like, you know what? We might be on to something with this. We might have to make this a little bit of a full-time thing versus a part-time thing. Can you describe an experience that comes to mind off the top of your head?
So we have a lot of testimonials, especially during our workshops, of where people's lives were transformed. I can tell you the one that actually was the most transformative was actually not even a couple. It was during our singles workshop, and this young lady and a lot of young people were in the workshop, and we were talking about the thought of having self-respect, and really focusing in on the worth of the individual, right? Getting them built up as a person. And then we have surveys before and afterwards. So they're filling out the survey. They rarely put their name on the survey because a lot of times, it's maybe it's a complaint or whatever, but they don't put their name on the survey. So we're reading the surveys afterwards, and we find out this young lady, and I still to this day don't know her name.
Oh, wow.
But I put her testimonial in our book, because what she said was she was currently in an affair with a married guy, and it wasn't going anywhere. But she realized during the workshop that she has way more value than to be in a relationship with a married guy that's not going anywhere.
Right.
So she said that in her testimony, she said, I'm going home, I'm ending that affair, and I'm going to take serious, pay more attention to my self-worth, and really get to the point to where I know how valuable my life and my time is. I'm not going to be basically selling myself, at that lower level. And it was such an interesting testimonial that we put it in our book, because even if that's the only life we ever transform, that would be awesome. But we've trained hundreds of young people like that, and thousands of married couples. There's this other couple. It's a married couple. They've been married 24 years. He was a stay-at-home stockbroker kind of guy, to where he's on the phone constantly talking to the different coasts. I don't know if he's a stockbroker, but he worked at home and he was on the phone all the time in his office.
Right.
And his wife was a stay-at-home mom. They had like 4 kids, and he provided a very good living for the family. Very good, nice home and all that stuff. So her issue was he didn't really respect her, in the sense that he didn't really pay her any attention. He was providing for her. He was her husband. It wasn't like he was cheating on her, but he just didn't really value her opinion, her thoughts, or anything else. So we have this program called this tool called Knees to Knees, where they have communication with each other. And this workshop segment that we did went on for like 30 minutes, but I'm going to condense it down to where She was trying to get him to come out of his office just to have dinner with her and the boys. And he said, look, I'm busy. I'm on the phone, da, 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 da. This went on for 30 minutes. Finally, he realized what she was saying. And it was like the whole world, the weight of all this just kind of lifted off her shoulders. It brought a smile to her face. It was like they had never communicated in 24 years until that one time in the workshop. It was such a powerful moment and stuff that we have video testimonials. We talk about this more, but I just lack of time, I can't go into it. But those kind of transformative things that we did in our workshop really cemented our idea that we needed to do this more on a full-time basis.
No, because what you really did, Casper, you provided the support, encouragement that not only couples needed, but also single people who are looking to get involved in forming their own couples needed, as far as just, providing, again, that support and that ability to uplift one another, whether they're in a couple or just empower just that particular individual.
Yeah.
Where faith is instilling that hope and that positive vibes to where everything will turn out well, even when challenges arise. And I feel like that's literally the picture that you painted. And that's literally the community that you're building as well, with you and your wife, Cheryl, basically just offering that support, offering that advice, and sometimes a little bit really of accountability, if you really think about it, helping keeping that love strong, which is more essential than anything. And I feel like that's kind of like the concepts of like not only the book that you and your wife Cheryl wrote, the divorce proofing your marriage is about in a way. And at the same time, I feel like you were talking to the men a little bit as well in your Mastering Adam book, as far as becoming the best Adam to your Eve. Both of those books, I love the concept and the titles of those, by the way. Yeah. But those who are listening to the HFWB podcast series, kind of give like a brief overview of what you want the listeners to get out of divorce proofing your marriage, and most importantly, the most recent book you put out called Mastering Adam, becoming the best Adam for your Eve.
Yeah. During those workshops that we did with that grant, it was a government grant, and we did it for 8 years, and they did not really allow us to talk about God. We could talk about love. We could talk about forgiveness. We could talk about communication. We could talk about purpose and self-worth, which are all godly principles, but we couldn't mention God or Christ. We couldn't pray for couples. None of that.
That's crazy.
So that was also the reason why we started IAM Love Builders, because now when we do a workshop, it's our workshop. It's our material.
Right.
And in the past, we were using other books to teach couples. Like we would use the 5 love languages. We would use His Needs, Her Needs, and Fireproof and other books like that. So we decided to write our own book and put some of our own information in it, biblical principled information for couples. And that's why we came up with Divorce Proofing Your Marriage. So that book is now 2 years old, right? So it's 2 years ago we wrote that book. And we wrote it so we could use our book in our workshops going forward. And then we could also, if we needed to stop the workshop and pray for a couple, like right there, we could do it and not get in trouble with the government or whoever, because it was our material.
Right.
So that was the reason why we launched Divorce Proofing Your Marriage. And it hit the hot new release list on Amazon, when we released it 2 years ago. And it's doing well, but a lot of people don't know about it, right? So that's why we're doing podcasts and interviews and all the marketing that we do to get the word out about the book.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. And I want to kind of touch on a little bit of the Mastering Adam, becoming the best Adam for your Eve, because when I was looking at that, as far as like the overview and description, the one thing that stood out to me, it's like, I wish I would have had access to a book like this maybe 5-10 years ago, or maybe I would say probably about right when I graduated from high school in 2010. I wish this book would have came out then, because I feel like just by a quick glance of it, I could tell this is a book that all men will need, not only just to become a better man for whatever woman they choose to get into a relationship with, but just becoming an overall better man within itself.
Yeah.
I'll touch on that a little bit as far as what Mastering Adam is all about. From your
absolutely. So I sent a pre-copy to my two son-in-laws because you're right. We all needed this kind of information. I needed it for sure. Right?
You're telling me.
Okay, so about a year ago, I did a podcast series called Mastering Adam.
Okay.
And it was 20 episodes. And the last episode, I had my wife on to kind of put a cap on it. But then I got a download in my spirit that like, okay, you need to write an accompanying book now to that podcast. So the Mastering Adam book is a accompanying piece to the podcast, to where each chapter kind of relates to what we talked about during the podcast. So what I did was I had 20 men of God come on and talk, and we just unpacked Adam. And it was weird because I did the podcast because I wanted to help men. But what happened was I helped myself more than I helped men because I was on every episode. So unless somebody listens to all the episodes, they won't get the benefit of everything that I got by having these guests on. One thing that I started out with was I was kind of blaming Adam for the fall.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the reason why we're in sin right now is Adam screwed up and whatever. I was blaming Adam. And that's how most Christians look at the Adam and Eve story or scenario. Well, I had a older pastor on the show, and he said, you know, I look at Adam and Eve totally different. He said, I see it as a love story. And I'm like, a love story? It kind of helped me with that, pastor. And he was like, well, he said, Adam was not a dumb creature, a dumb entity, right? He was smart. He was talking with God on an everyday basis, right? He wasn't like
without question.
Exactly. So when the fall happened, and we don't know all the intricate details, but we do know that Eve was convinced to take a bite of the fruit, whatever the fruit was, and she handed it to Adam.
Yep.
Yeah. And it wasn't like he didn't know that was the fruit.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it was like he just kind of stumbled into it and said, took a bite and said, oh man, Eve, really?
Yeah, exactly.
It was like he had to make a decision. And God had created this perfect partner, this perfect being,
right,
for him to be with. And yes, the love of him and God was there, but this other entity, this Eve that God created, was even a stronger love because, and they were both eternal beings.
Yep.
So he had the choice of either being eternally going on without Eve by not taking a bite of the apple, or joining Eve in that situation, in that experience, and saying, hey, regardless, we're going to be together. Either it's going to be okay or it's not, but we'll be together. And he chose to join her in that sin.
It's funny how you mentioned that, Adam. I mean, Casper, in that particular moment, because Yes, a lot of people, that's an interesting way to tell the story of Adam and Eve now that I
Right.
think about it, because we always focus on like the temptation by the serpent, as you mentioned, Eve eating the forbidden fruit, Adam following along, leading to their expulsion from the
Right.
Garden of Eden, as they
Right.
talk about in the book of Genesis. But most people don't realize that yes, it was an act of disobedience and they made the choice to do that, but they didn't do it because they didn't care. They did it because of the fact that they loved each other and they were willing to,
Yeah.
you could make an argument, Casper, that the story of Adam and Eve is the original story of until death do us part,
Right. Exactly. And that's what this pastor was saying. And
it makes sense when you bring it.
Yeah. So I had 20 episodes like that with deep conversations about the Adam and Eve scenario.
Yeah.
Even the fact that Eve, people say, well, why did she talk to the snake? Well, first of all, they were probably talking to all the animals.
Oh yeah.
And the snake wasn't evil. The snake was just another animal, right? Satan entered into the snake. So it wasn't even bizarre for Eve to be talking to the snake.
Yeah.
And even if Adam saw her talking to the snake, it wasn't like he ran over and said, "What are you doing? Don't talk to him."
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So, and it wasn't the first conversation, because I don't just walk up to you and say, "Did your fiance really tell you such and such?" Right. Yeah. I have to know that you were having conversations with your wife or your fiance or whoever before. Right. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot that went into that.
Oh yeah.
And yes, she was deceived into thinking that she could be just like God or whatever, the scenario is.
Of course.
But it wasn't just as simple as her being tricked and then Adam being tricked and now all of us are screwed. It wasn't that simple.
Yeah. And you mentioned one key word. It really came down to a choice. I mean, at the end of the day, when it all comes down to, you know this better than me, probably, Casper, but God gives us a choice to do whatever we want within the course of our lives. It's just a matter if that choice is a good or a bad choice. But God leaves it up to you, even though he knows from within what you're already going to do. Right. He's providing you like the two options. Okay, which one do you want to do? I know what's going to come out of each of those options, regardless of what you choose. And I'm still going to love you and forgive you, but just choose wisely. And that's what he was presenting to Adam and Eve at the time. And that's what he presented to literally all of the great prophets that we hear about in the Bible. We can go on and on in regards to that, but from that perspective of Adam and Eve, that's honestly the first I've ever heard of it, and I never thought of it like that. And it actually makes a little bit more sense as far as just going back to, love being the anchor and faith being, of course, like the guiding star within that love that just a man and a woman has from one another. And speaking of that, what would be like some key pieces of advice you can think of off the top of your head, Casper, for anyone who is struggling with finding that right love or struggling with their own faith, to where they can have love be more of an anchor and they can have faith be more of a guiding star within their course of their life? What would be some key pieces of advice you would tell someone listening to the podcast today?
Absolutely. So, what my wife and I have discovered over the years of doing this coaching for couples and singles is that the most important thing you can do, or I can do, or anyone can do, is get your life together. Because what happens is sometimes we look for someone to complete us or fill in the void, the gaps.
Yep.
And then we wind up taking from them instead of it being an addition and multiplication, it winds up being, maybe we're whole sometimes together. Mm-hmm. So we created this program called MVP, Most Valuable Partner. And we work on each individual, making sure they are strong in communication, making sure they are whole, making sure they are healed, making sure they are saved, all these different things. So that when they do find the right partner, like when my wife and I got together, she didn't find me in my mom's basement. Okay. That's not a man if you have to live in your parents' basement. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're there for a time because you're saving money, if there's a plan, that's totally fine. But if you're going to be a quote unquote man on your own, then your wife needs to find you working, find you producing.
Right.
Because she can come alongside you and turn that garden into something.
Yes.
But there needs to be a garden for her to turn it into something.
Right.
That's your responsibility. The garden, the home, the environment, all that was Adam's responsibility long before Eve showed up. She came in to be a helpmate, to help him with those things. So the first thing that young men need to do is be self-sufficient, have a work, have a business, some kind of enterprise, to where the woman can now come alongside of that and say, wow, let me help you with that. Let me become your assistant. Let me become the secretary. Let me become whatever, your partner. Let me find people to that we can work together. We can partner with to grow this garden, to grow this enterprise into something tremendous. That's what her job is, to nurture and build that up, to incubate it and turn it into something.
That is some sound advice right there, Casper. And for anyone who's listening to this episode of the HFWB podcast series, you need to rewind exactly what Casper just said, because honestly, I feel like you literally just and I wouldn't say redefined it, but kind of gave people a reminder of what a man's role is, and most importantly, a woman's role is in a relationship. And I feel like that's the reason why a lot of these relationships are in such chaos and turmoil and uncertainty, because we forgot what our role is, and we need to be reminded of that sometimes. Right. So I feel like, Casper, you did a wonderful job explaining that to the audience on this particular episode. And please, for those who are listening, rewind what Casper just said until it's embedded in the brain, and put this words of wisdom into practice and see how it could transform your life as well. Can't thank you enough for that, Casper, as we transition to the list of questions that I usually ask everyone who comes onto the podcast, so we can dive into your world just a little bit more, with question number one being, what's the first thing you do or think of every single day that you wake up?
So the first thing I do is when I wake up, I have this video that I watch now. I've been doing this for the past 400 plus days. Right. And it's called I Am Free by Keith Moore. I Am Free. Okay. And Keith Moore, he's a pastor and stuff, been out there for years. I think he's a singer as well, but he did this one portion of the Believers Conference. Okay. And he has this little simple song, I am free, I'm free. And I'm listening to that. I'm saying, okay, I get it. But he went on for 50 something minutes talking about he's free. And what he's saying is that we as Christians, we said, that's it. I need to be free. But then he said, no, you don't understand. You don't need to be free. You are free. Christ died on the cross 2,000 something years ago to free you. You were free. You've been free ever since then. He doesn't need to come back and die again for you to be more free. Exactly. You just need to walk into that freedom. So we're all free. We just don't walk in it. We need to walk into it or not. So I started listening to this, and I got free from all kinds of negative thinking. I got free from light addictions to different things, from even sexual addictions to alcohol. And I wasn't like an alcoholic or anything, but I don't even drink hard liquor anymore, because I got free from that. Because I wanted my mind to be crystal clear on what my wife and I are doing, and I didn't want anything to cloud that. So I got free from envy. I got free from strife. I got free from selfishness. I got free from all those little things. And see, Clifton, it's the little things that mess us up. Yep. Because even if you're free from the sexual addiction, are you free from getting mad at somebody to cut you off in the car? Are you free from somebody that cuts in front of you at the line at the grocery store?
Oh, man.
You know, are you free from all these little things? And the enemy is waiting for you as Mr. Christian to cuss somebody out because they cut in line in front of you. See, what kind of Christian are you? So it's those little things that trip us up. And this I Am Free just freed me up. I've been listening to it every day for 400 something days now, ever since I heard it the first time.
No, I was actually looking it up as you were explaining it as well. And I thank you for that resource, Casper, because I'm going to definitely add that into my regime as 2024 comes to a close and we go into 2025 and beyond. Yeah. That's definitely going to be a part of my library. So thank you for that resource that you provided not only to myself, but everyone who's listening to the HFW podcast series. That way they can free themselves over whatever addiction or whatever struggle they may be going through. Now, my next question
I'm going to warn you, you're going to find it corny. At first time I listened to it, I was like, this is the corniest thing I ever heard in my life. But something told me, listen to it again. And then listen to it again.
Yeah.
And I just started listening to it over and over. And now it's a part of my psyche.
As in other words, approach it with an open mind perspective. That way you can overcome the corniness, and that way you can see what the true message is. Correct. Well said, Casper. Well said. My next question for you, of course, with my company, Health, Fitness, Wealth Business, one of the main models is health is wealth. We've heard this before. Honestly, I feel like you can't have one without the other. They're kind of two sides of the coin to a certain degree. But in your personal definition, Casper, what does health and wealth mean for yourself?
It's everything, because our body is our temple.
Yep.
It's where God resides. And if you don't treat your body well, to me, that's an indication of how well you respect God, how well you reverence God.
Exactly.
Okay, so when I turned 50, which was 15 years ago next week,
right?
My body was not in shape at all. And things started to stop working, if you will.
Right.
And I was like, that's it. And I started working out every day since then. And I've only missed a couple of days over the years now that I haven't done some kind of work, either went for a run or went for a walk or did something physically. So health is critical. And now I do have some enhancements from Walmart called Just for Men, right? For the gray.
Yeah.
But most people would not say that I look 65 years old, right? And I have a great grandson, by the way. He's 2 years. He'll be 2 years old next month. So I'm healthier than my kids, and I'm healthier than their kids.
I love that.
So health is critical, and I plan on living happily and healthy till I'm 120 plus. So it's critical.
No, it is critical because we focus on chasing the next form of success, and I tell people this all the time. We focus on chasing the next form of success to where we neglect ourselves and we forget to take care of our number one investment, which is ourself. And it's kind of like what one of my favorite comedians, Cat Williams, used to say: you have to be in tune with your star player, which is you.
100%.
So that's pretty much all there is at the end of the day. And that's what will allow you to build your own community, at the same time fit in with any community that you choose to in the process. And it's funny how I'm mentioning community, because that leads into my next question. You hear the word community, Casper. What's the first thing that comes to mind for yourself? Well,
there's a couple of different community cliques, if you will. There's the quote unquote, the Black community. There's the Christian community.
Yep.
There's a political community, all these different communities. It's just a gathering of like-minded minds that come together, hopefully for a common goal of uplifting each other.
Right.
The challenge that I have found is some of these communities do the exact opposite. They don't uplift each other. They don't help each other. It's almost like crabs in a barrel.
Oh man, you're telling me.
So I am very cautious as to what community I commit to being a part of.
Right.
Like I'm definitely a part of my church community because we're always praying and uplifting each other and working, helping each other grow. Now I will go into the community to help do something, to build something. But if they're going to sit around and complain, I'm like, I'm out, because I live in the burbs for a reason, right? So I go into the community to help if they want my help, but if they don't want my help, then I'm out, because I got more important things to be doing to help as many people as I can that want to get to that next level.
I love that. That's probably one of the best definitions I've ever heard of community on this particular episode, without question. We're going to make a little bit of a shift, Casper. I'm going to give you choices, see which one you would offer out of each of the choices, with the first one being loyalty or respect.
Wow. And I have to choose between the two?
It's difficult because you really can't have one without the other, but if you had to choose, which one?
Respect.
Okay.
Because respect to me will lead to loyalty.
Yep.
If I respect someone, then I'm going to be loyal to them. Like for my wife, I respect her. I want her to respect me. And if she respects me, she's going to do the right things when she's out of my presence. And I'm going to do the things that respects her when I'm out of her presence.
Well said. Well said. Would you rather live in space or live in the ocean?
In the ocean, like how in the ocean?
Like for instance, living underwater in the ocean.
Space.
Got you. Would you rather be famous and poor or anonymous and rich?
Famous and poor. Anonymous and rich.
Would you rather have unlimited free meals or unlimited first class tickets where you can travel?
First class tickets where I can travel, because I'll get food.
Got you. Would you rather sing to every song or dance to every song?
Dance.
Now, picture this hypothetical situation, Casper. You're on a deserted island, trapped, nowhere to go, but you have the option to listen to 5 of your favorite music artists of all time. It doesn't matter the genre. It's their whole catalog of music. Who would those 5 music artists be?
Wow. So over the years, I've kind of grown away from even knowing some of the artists today, because they're just...
That's fair.
To me, the music is just kind of crazy. So for me, it would be like the R&B era of music.
Okay.
Like Anita Baker, Sade, Earth, Wind and Fire, those kind of...
you can't go wrong with those. Those are 3 great choices right there, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll accept that. What is your favorite go-to meal, Casper?
Favorite go-to meal?
Yes.
So probably some type of meat. I'm a carnivore, like straight up, right? So
nothing wrong with that.
I love this restaurant called Rodizio's, and it's a Brazilian all-you-can-eat.
I love that.
Meat. So they bring out all kinds of meat, but the ham and pineapple is that's like top shelf right there. Ham and pineapple.
Gotcha.
Doesn't get any better than that.
I love it. You did mention that you do like to travel. Where's your favorite place that you have traveled to before, and where's a place you would like to travel to that you've never been before?
So I've been all over Europe. Spain was probably the most interesting place that I've been. But I've been to France, I've been to Germany, been to Italy, I've been to England, those European countries, Belgium. I spent 2.5 years living in Belgium, and I spent 3 years living in Germany. I was in the military.
Right, of course.
I want to go to Greece. I want to go to some parts of Africa. I have not been. My wife has been to Africa, but I have not been, so I definitely want to do that.
You gotta return to the motherland eventually, as us Black folks are, for sure. That's like a given right there within the Black community, that we have to visit Africa and return back to the motherland and to the roots at some point within the course of our life. I totally agree with that. When you're not doing all the stuff that you're doing on a regular basis, Casper, what are some of your favorite hobbies you like to do that many people may not know you like to do?
Yeah, so I got into fly fishing probably 30 years ago.
Okay.
I was in South Dakota, stationed in South Dakota, and there's not a whole lot to do in South Dakota.
Right.
So I got into either you hunt or you fish in South Dakota. So I got into fishing, and I got into tying my own flies. So I tied my own flies and went fly fishing. So now I love fly fishing.
Nothing wrong with that, and it's a great sense of peace as far as being out in the waters and just being able to just relax while catching your next meal. You can't go wrong with that.
Yeah.
My last question for you, Casper, as we wrap everything up, I usually ask everybody this: if you had the opportunity to go back in time and talk to yourself 10 years ago, what would you tell yourself in that exact moment? And based on your current journey you're on, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
Yeah, and I didn't know you were going to ask this question, but I've actually contemplated this question many, many times. But I'm also a believer in there's no coincidences kind of thing. So if I went back and told myself something, I think that would alter kind of where I'm at now. In other words, if I told myself, look, don't buy that stock, or don't don't get that job or whatever, but that's going to alter something else that could lead to me not knowing my wife, not having the children that I have, not having the life that I have. So I'm almost to the point to where I would just say to my younger self, just pay attention. Just pay attention to stuff, read more, don't be so quick to dismiss things more. Just pay more attention to your life as you're going, because there's a lot of things that I missed that I shouldn't have missed, but I was just too busy, wrapped up in myself to do it.
Got you. And where do you see yourself within the next 10 years?
Well, I'm already retired, and I'm busier now than I was before I got retired. So we didn't see ourselves on TV last year. We didn't see ourselves on TV. Now we're on TV. In 10 years, I see us producing more TV shows with other couples launching shows, or individuals launching TV shows. I see us having 40 plus acres of land to where we're doing couples retreats on that land. We're doing trainings. We're doing all kinds of things for couples to fly into Colorado. I see us traveling a lot more, and I see us just helping hundreds of thousands of people all across the world divorce-proof their marriage, have a more enriched life and relationship.
I love that. And I feel like if we've learned anything in this particular episode, for those who are listening, we're showing that whether you're single, whether in your relationship, that you can basically weather any storm that life throws at you by just believing in yourself, trusting the process, and at the same time, just creating that mutual respect within yourself to where you can respect others. And it creates such this beautiful symphony to where it creates so many wonderful harmonies to where you could basically transform yourself through the energy forces, the frequency levels, and all of those things. And I appreciate you, Casper, for just sharing all the wisdom that you provided. Most importantly on this episode, is I'm truly grateful for it, and all the people who are listening will definitely be grateful for it as well. Indeed. Where can people get in contact with you as far as your social media handles? Where can people get in contact with as far as like, IAM Love Builders, as far as all the TV shows that you're working on, and most importantly, buy the books that you have out. Let the people know.
Yeah. So my books are on Amazon. The Mastering Adam book is not going to be available until the 16th, which is next week on my birthday is when we're launching it.
Got you.
All the books are on Amazon. They can go to our website to get connected to everything that we do. In fact, we have a new app, Clifton. It's called MVP app.
Right.
If you go to IAM Love Builders with an S.com, IAMLoveBuilders.com, they can download the free app. And in that app are some training videos that we provide for free. Mm-hmm. There's access to our weekly trainings that we do for singles and couples for free. All of that is accessible through the app. They can get to all of our TV shows and our streaming services through the app. They can get to our books through the app. They can get to everything that we're doing right now through the app. So that's where I send people is IAMLoveBuilders.com, and then click on the MVP, Most Valuable Partner app. And then for free, they can download it and we'll be connected.
Will do. I'm going to definitely add that to my portfolio myself as well, Casper. And for everybody listening, be sure to visit IAMLoveBuilders.com. That way you can get everything access to not only Casper, but of course, most importantly, his lovely wife, Cheryl, because they're doing transformational things, let me tell you. And this is something to be tapped into for sure, not only just going into 2025, but beyond that as time goes on.
Yes.
That will definitely be in the show notes as well. So don't worry about that, Casper. And with that being said, I just want to thank you once again for making time out of your productive schedule to simply bless us with an appearance on the HFWB podcast series. I truly appreciate the conversation and the words of wisdom.
It was actually my pleasure to do so, Clifton, man, and much success to you, sir.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And for everybody listening to the HFWB podcast series, this is your host, Clifton Pope, encouraging y'all to stay healthy, wealthy, and blessed. And until next time, peace and love and positive vibrations.
Amen.